Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for your testimonies. Again, Mr. Gwyn, welcome back. In your testimony, you noted that not all states have fully implemented regulations, that is, to right-size child support orders, including modifying them for changes in circumstances like job loss, incarceration. Uh, what impact does this have on children and families, especially low income?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Well, as I think you know, about a decade ago, there was a new regulatory change at the federal level to try to make sure that child support orders more accurately reflected the financial circumstances of both parents. And one of those changes was to ensure that states were prohibited from treating incarceration, for example, as voluntary unemployment. And the problem with some of the prior policies was that non-custodial parents were having huge debt pile up, even at times in which they were unable to pay current child support. And the regulatory change was to make sure that at a point of incarceration, either the non-custodial parent that was being incarcerated had the opportunity to modify their child support order, the amount in the order, or the state could automatically modify based on their status. And again, the purpose here is to prevent these huge debts from accruing that the non-custodial parent is simply unable to pay. And those debts lead to other consequences, including potentially the suspension of drivers and professional licenses, which make the payment of child support that much harder. And this in turn can drive these non-custodial parents underground and place them in a situation where they are not paying any child support. And probably as a result, they are less likely to be involved in their children's lives in other ways. And that's obviously not in anyone's interest, not in the child's interest, not in the custodial parent's interest, and certainly not in the non-custodial parent's interest. So I don't quite actually know where states are in implementing these reforms that were close to a decade old now. I think most states do have procedures in place that are consistent with the required regulations, but I think that is probably an area that we need more study.
Thank you. Also, let me ask, the Department of Health and Human Services is illegally withholding my state's funding for TANF, child care and social services, block grant money, harming millions of children and families. In your view, do you feel that HHS have the legal authority to withhold this funding?
Well, it's certainly very disturbing that 5 states had this funding withheld that includes these 3 important programs without any evidence in the letters that were sent to those states about any kind of fraud that was actually occurring. There's no documentation of fraud in those states. All of these programs have their own processes and procedures for dealing with inappropriate or misspending within the programs. In the case of TANF, there's a penalty structure for states that misspend dollars. And in fact, we saw a very large penalty invoked for the state of Mississippi a year or 2 ago. So there are policies and procedures already in place to deal with misspending. The letters that went to the 5 states did not follow any of those procedures. Instead, it took the unprecedented step of freezing funding for 5 states until those states provided additional information that is not required under law. So from that standpoint, yes, I don't think there's legal basis for the step that the administration took. And that funding freeze is now under a temporary restraining order, which runs through this Friday, and then we'll see what the courts do in terms of their next step.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me ask you, if I could, Ms. Thorne, previous research has shown that domestic violence is an issue in 40% of Texas child support cases. what specific staff training safety measures does Texas use to ensure that parenting time agreements do not become weapons for abusers? And are these safety measures funded using access visitation grants? And is Texas participating in the Safe Access for Victims Economic Security SAVES demonstration funded by HHS?
Sure. Thank you for the question. This is a question that is near and dear to my heart. I actually wrote the training that is delivered to our staff. My background is in domestic violence and child support and making sure that survivors have the ability to access the system safely. We provide a mandatory 4-hour training to all staff and a mandatory annual training that goes over in detail the ways that child support enforcement and even just their administrative processes can elevate risk for survivors, especially around the time that they are exiting an abusive relationship. So this is something Texas takes very seriously. We also require all of our vendors, any private sector partners to undergo training if they interact with our customers to be aware of these dynamics as well. We have policies in place that provide safeguards for survivors navigating our processes, and that extends to our access and visitation grant as well. So we make sure that all of our grantees receive this same training. We have very integrated our access and visitation program within the child support program, and so they receive all of that same policy direction and support and training for survivors. Did I answer all of your questions? I'm sorry, I think I got all of them.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.